What's up, StarCraft fans? The last commander for this round of reworks is Alarak. Monk posted today a detailed description of his changes and we'll go through them one by one right now. Starting with Empower Me. Alarak's Empower Me will now scale twice as much for Alarak's mechanical units. Each supply of Alarak's mechanical units will improve his attack and ability damage by 10%, up from 5%. Alarak's fantasy is that he is the leader of the Tal Darim, a warlike society that places much value on its tradition of ascendancy. Alarak sits at the top of this societal ladder, why not social ladder? Anyway, and other units in his army exist only to serve him. Well, to a fault. Sometimes his ascendants are better. Anyway, gameplay-wise, we feel his supplicants and ascendants support this idea well, as they both have abilities that directly and specifically buff Alarak. However, we feel we can push this fantasy even further with his other units, which all happen to be mechanical. We considered many options for how we could achieve this and ended up improving the way in which Empower Me scales with his mechanical units. Of all the options we considered, we felt that this was the most elegant, as Empower Me is an existing ability that already scales up with the supply cost of units affected. So it's the supply cost, yeah, not the number of units. Alarak's Empower Me will now reset the cooldowns of Deadly Charge and Destruction Wave. We want players to feel immediately powerful after Empower Me, and thus are making this change so that Empower Me, Deadly Charge, and Destruction Wave will always be able to be used in quick succession. So the trick, or the new trick here now, is to use Deadly Charge and Destruction Wave before activating Empower Me so that it will be reset immediately and you will not waste any cooldown time. If Blizzard says that the double buff or the 2 times buff is the most elegant solution they've found, I'll have to believe them on that. However, I personally feel that this may not be enough to compensate, since with Ascendants you can basically reset Alarak's cooldowns manually. Basically, you have as many charges as your Ascendants and Supplicants. The more times you use Sacrifice, the more times Alarak's cooldowns get reset. So that's really the thing with Alarak's Empower Me synergy with Ascendants and Supplicants. Anyway, I understand it's difficult to estimate how a simple doubling of its effects completely offsets the manual reset. Since if you played Ascendants at all, you know that they are the flat-out stronger unit. In fact, so strong that sometimes you don't even bother to micro Alarak, you just micro your Ascendants and they'll do just fine. You know who Alarak will really like for this change though? Swan and Phoenix. Both of them have Mech as their only options, which means they'll power up Alarak even harder. Just not sure if it's on the same level as Stukov and Biorainer or even Zagara, but it'll definitely help. Slayer. Slayer damage changed from 10 to 13 with a +4 buff to Armored. Ground weapon upgrades now provide Slayers with +1 damage, with +2 versus Armored, up from +1 damage. The Slayers' Blink ability replaced with the Phase Blink ability, which retain all functionality of Blink. In addition, after casting Phase Blink, the Slayer will deal double the damage with its next attack. As with Vorazun's Stalker, we will be increasing both the base damage and how it scales with upgrades. In addition, we'd like to push the offense-oriented Tal'Darim fantasy even more, and thus will be improving Blink, so that Slayers will deal even more damage after being cast. Good changes. I see a burst potential here by blinking into an enemy base and shooting for double damage, especially since there's another upgrade that allows the Slayers to be temporarily invulnerable. I like it. Just not sure if the AI will prevent them from overkilling things, but I definitely see the micro potential here. We will definitely try it out after the patch. Vanguard. Vanguard area of effect radius increased from 0.6 to 1.2, so that it's double. The Vanguard has a very complicated weapon, so we looked into many different options for how we could adjust and improve it. We eventually came up with a larger area of effect radius. Yeah, who doesn't need more splash? More splash is usually better. For you at least. Or for the thing dealing the splash damage. Anyway, which should make it harder for the Vanguard to completely miss a moving target and reinforces the unit's area of effect roll. I mean, unless you go for Ascendance, that is. I don't use a lot of Vanguards myself, but from the discussions I've seen, it seems that the Vanguard fires 4 shots per volley, and they often miss moving targets. With this change, they'll double the hit radius, so that that actually means they're increasing the area by about 6, because, you know, 2 pi, yeah. Anyway, I'll make some when I try out a robo build with Alarak. I remember when I first played Alarak, I thought robo build was the best. It was pretty funny, but then again, I didn't have buffed up Ascendant, so what did I know? I'll probably focus harder on keeping the dudes in front of me, maybe using Supplicants, just so they're easier for my Vanguards to hit. Wrathwalker. Ground weapon upgrades now provide Wrathwalkers with plus 10, with plus 18 damage versus structure, up from plus 10 damage. I like it. Wrathwalkers are in a pretty good place right now, so we'd just like to slightly improve how well they scale with upgrades. I like this. They'll be even stronger versus buildings, which is what I feel they were for in the first place. With full upgrades, they'll deal about plus 54 damage, 18 times 3, versus buildings. Has a bit of overkill potential though. They're basically ground tempests right now, so if it were up to me, I think maybe a buff to their attack speed would be even better than simply the attack damage, so that there's slightly less overkill potential. Anyway, War Prism. War Prisms in phasing mode are now valid targets for structure overcharge. Switching modes will allow the Prism to retain the barrier portion of the ability, but disable the damage portion until the Prism is switched back to phasing mode. So basically, it only deals damage when it's in phasing mode, but when it's in mobile mode, there's no damage, but it does have the shield still. War Prism power radius increased from 4.65 to 4.75 to 6.5. War Prism movement speed increased from 2.0, this is fast, 3.38. War Prism transformation time decreased from 1 to 0.75, so it's faster to transform. War Prisms can now transform without coming to a full stop. We want War Prisms to feel like mobile pylons, so we wanted to remove some of their differences. Does that mean they'll also provide supply now? Perhaps most importantly, pylons can be targets for structure overcharge, while War Prisms cannot. So we'll be amending this. We will also be increasing the power radius of the War Prism so that it matches that of the pylon. Finally, we'll be making some improvements to the responsiveness of the War Prism. This is a really funky change actually. They want us to add more War Prisms in our army, but I don't know. Personally, I still feel, or I'd still rather make pylons since they increase supply. But I guess the nice thing about this is that you can reposition it. Some of its damage output will also be lost, but the whole point of overcharging the War Prism, instead of the pylon, is that the pylon can run out of targets. You know, since it's a structure, and yeah, it can't move. And therefore, if it runs out of targets, it wastes all its damage potential. The War Prism at least can move to a new location to salvage some of its damage output. Plus, it's an air unit, so fewer things can shoot back at it, so that's nice. Upgrades. Ground weapon upgrades renamed to Protoss weapon upgrades. Ground armor upgrades renamed to Protoss armor upgrades. War Prisms, motherships, and destroyers will no longer start with 3 air and 3 ground upgrades, but instead will benefit from Alarak's upgrades from his forge. These changes are aimed at making Alarak's upgrades work more consistently with those of other commanders. This is actually a downgrade of upgrades, since the Death Fleet initially starts with all upgrades. Oh well, it was nice while it lasted. I doubt it'll be too impactful though. After all, you only have few charges of Death Fleet per game, I think 2 or 3 per game. And most players don't even use them as often as they should, so yeah, I doubt this will actually be impactful. This one will be though. Masteries. Shield overcharge attack speed increased by 95%. So the base at level 1 will be increased by 95%. You can tell this is huge. 95%. It's basically doubling it. Shield overcharge barrier absorption increased from 200 to 400. Shield overcharge shield and attack speed mastery bonus increased from 7% or decreased from 7% per point to 2% per point. This is also massive. Maximum bonuses decrease from 210% to 60%. So they're basically rebalancing the structure overcharge. They say shield overcharge, but it's basically structure overcharge. Shield overcharge is Artanis' ability. They mixed it up for structure overcharge. Oh, look at that. Blizzard makes mistakes too. Anyway, yeah, they're basically rebalancing it. They're moving the structure overcharge power from the mastery to the base ability, and I like it. Because of how powerful it is, the shield overcharge mastery felt like a must pick. We'll be transferring, yeah, like I said, we'll be transferring much of its power to the base ability in order to make the choice of mastery more competitive. In other words, they want it to be more ambiguous. Empower Me duration mastery increased from 0.5 seconds per point to plus 1 second per point. Maximum bonuses increase from 15 seconds to 30 seconds, so basically they will double. They will double the duration of Empower Me mastery. Deathfleet cooldown mastery increased from minus 2 seconds per point to minus 4 seconds per point. So basically they decreased the cooldown from 2 to 4 per point. Maximum bonuses increased from minus 60 to minus 120 seconds. Thanks to player feedback, we noticed that these masteries feel a bit weak. We'll be doubling the effectiveness of both. Okay, first with the structure overcharge. Now, the mastery nerf for them might seem severe, but the base overcharge strength has been buffed. If you consider that, it's a very slight buff of the overcharge if you have full masteries. I believe up to 312%, up from 310%. Very slight. The best part though is that this is amazing for new Alarak players. If your Alarak is level 1, you should wait for the patch to hit, because with the changes, your first overcharge will now have enough firepower to clear your main rocks and allow you to fast expand. I repeat, if your Alarak is level 1, your structure overcharge will now destroy your first rock. Previously, you had to painfully take it down with Alarak sometimes, or even supplicants, which is I'm glad I don't have to go back to that. Anyway, this was previously only possible if you were level 87 with full overcharge mastery. And yeah, that's how great it is. So for the second mastery between the Empower Me and Deathfleet cooldown, when I did the math, I gleaned that the Deathfleet cooldown mastery will give you 1 extra charge per game. It will only be really impactful if you use Deathfleet as often as possible instead of saving it like a panic button, which is unfortunately what most players do. Empower Me will allow Alarak to gain more power, or to gain more from Empower Me whether let me repeat that. Empower Me will allow Alarak to gain more from Empower Me, whether you use it often or not, because it's the duration that increases. So it's up more often. So even if you use it 1 time or 2 times or 3 times, it will remain the same. The buff will remain the same. It's great. So unless you really like using Deathfleet, I recommend using the Empower Me duration mastery. I believe that's all. Oh wait, for Artanis, in the past 2 weeks we've talked a lot about Stalker variants, but there's one more we haven't talked about yet, the Dragoon. We've noticed a lot of discussion surrounding the Dragoon recently, so we think it's time to revisit this topic. As we previously addressed, we think it's important that Dragoons retain much of their identity from StarCraft 1. But at the same time, we agree that the Dragoon could use an additional power buff. I mean, retaining their identity from StarCraft 1 is great, but this is co-op. Nothing in co-op resembles multiplayer. I mean, aside from the unit names, but everything here is a way scaled up version, so it doesn't make sense to just have it identical to StarCraft 1. You know what I'm saying? Thus, we'll be looking for ways to buff the Dragoon, while at the same time respecting the unit's origins. In other words, they still want it to be very clunky. Dragoon movement speed increased from 2.25 to 2.95, and weapon speed changed from 2 to 1.764. First, we'll be improving the Dragoon's movement speed and weapon speed to much more closely match its StarCraft 1 stats. During testing, we found that this increased movement speed, in combination with its 8 maximum range, was especially helpful for kiting enemy units. Oh, so we're going to kite with Dragoons now. Okay then, kiting with the clunkiest units in the game. The weapon speed change will also allow players to kite at a similar cadence to what they might remember for StarCraft 1. Yeah, not a lot of players from StarCraft 1 left. Well, none that I know of. Dragoon damage increased from 14 to 15, with +2 armor, with +2 damage for his armor increase. Dragoons now receive +2, +3 for his armored, for +1, +3 for his armored damage, I guess. Yeah, now receive, damage. This slight damage buff is intended to help Dragoons scale better with upgrades. Combined with the attack speed buff, it should represent a significant increase in damage. And Dragoon base HP increased from 80 to 100. Pretty good, 25% increase. Can't say no to that. Dragoons will now come out of the box with more HP, matching his Brood War stats. The Dragoon's Trillic Compression Mesh upgrade renamed to Trillic Compression Systems. It now increases the Dragoon's HP by 20, down from 40. Huh. Okay, so they just moved the HP from the upgrade to the base. Yeesh. In addition, it will allow Dragoons to regenerate shields in combat and doubles their shield regeneration. Oh, this is good. This one allows them to survive a bit longer. We wanted to make the Trillic Compression Mesh upgrade to be more interesting, so we'll be adding some passive shield regeneration to the upgrade. Combined with some micro, this will allow Dragoon-centric strategies to have some more sustainability. Yeah, I guess, but they're still super clunky though. While playtesting this new Dragoon, my personal favorite moment was when I was able to force enemy siege tanks to continuously siege and unsiege, taking advantage of their slow siege animation to pick them off one by one, reminiscent of Brood War. This is nice and all. I mean, I like the nuanced playstyle, but co-op is all about killing things as fast as possible. The fancy micro is nice, but it won't really help your damage output. To be honest, I'd rather still just if I had Dark Templar, it doesn't matter whether I micro or not, they'll just go down all the same. So yeah, it's still yeah. I mean, if you're gonna solo with Artanis, it could be good, but if you have an ally, usually your ally will kill much faster than you do. Sad to say. We recognize these changes are major changes to the Dragoon, and we do have some concerns about the role overlapping too much with both Immortals and Tempests. So we'll be closely monitoring the situation. Oh, don't worry about that. The Immortals and Tempests still do most of the damage. This is good, but it's not Immortal level. Don't worry about it. Anyway, those are all the changes. I expect them to go live either next week or the week after that, so stay tuned. Hope you enjoyed that. Thank you for watching. If you have an idea for what else I can do, please leave that in a comment. See you.